The fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport buzzed overhead as Jonathan Mitchell checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Flight 447 from Chicago was delayed again, and his 6-year-old son Tommy was getting restless in the uncomfortable terminal chairs. What Jonathan didn't know was that in the next 30 minutes, his life would change forever when he'd make a split-second decision to help a terrified little girl. A decision that would uncover secrets worth billions and put his family in the crosshairs of people who would kill to keep those secrets buried. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The coffee in Jonathan's paper cup had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. His construction-calloused hands gripped the cup as he watched Tommy color in his superhero coloring book, tongue poking out in concentration. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, and these weekend pickups at the airport had become their new normal. Sarah lived in Chicago now with her new husband, a successful lawyer who could give Tommy things Jonathan's modest contractor. Salary never could. "Dad, when's Mom's plane gonna get here?" Tommy asked, not looking up from his drawing of what appeared to be a flying truck. "Soon, buddy," the lady at the counter said. "Maybe 20 more minutes." Jonathan ruffled his son's sandy brown hair, the same color as his own. At 34, Jonathan felt older than his years. The divorce, the custody arrangements, the financial strain of maintaining 2 households, it all weighed on him like the heavy beams he lifted at construction sites. Gate B-17 was relatively quiet for a Saturday afternoon. A businessman in an expensive suit typed furiously on his laptop. An elderly couple shared a bag of pretzels while reading separate books. A young mother bounced a crying baby, whispering soft reassurances. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in a few minutes everything would shift. Jonathan's phone buzzed. A text from his foreman, Rick. "Emergency at the Henderson site. Water main burst. Need you here ASAP," Jonathan cursed under his breath. The Henderson project was their biggest contract this year, a luxury housing development on the outskirts of Boulder, the kind of place where houses started at $2 million. He couldn't afford to lose this job, not with Tommy's school expenses and the mortgage on their small ranch house in Thornton. He was typing a response when he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold. A child crying, but not the normal fussing of a tired kid. This was pure terror, the kind of crying that came from deep, primal fear. Jonathan looked up from his phone and scanned the gate area. The sound was coming from near the windows, where a small figure sat hunched on a bench. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with long dark hair that partially obscured her face. She wore expensive-looking clothes, a navy blue dress with white trim that probably cost more than Jonathan spent on clothes in 6 months, and shiny black shoes that had never seen a playground. "Tommy, stay right here for a second, okay?" Jonathan stood up, his parental instincts overriding everything else. "Where are you going, Dad?" "Just checking on someone. Don't move from this spot." Jonathan approached the girl slowly, the way he might approach a frightened animal. As he got closer, he could see she was clutching a small pink backpack to her chest like a lifeline. Her shoulders shook with each sob. "Hey there," Jonathan said gently, crouching down to her eye level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" The girl looked up, and Jonathan's heart nearly broke. Her face was streaked with tears, her dark eyes wide with fear and confusion. She couldn't have been more than 8, with delicate features and olive skin that suggested mixed heritage. Despite her obvious distress, there was something almost regal about her posture, the way she held herself even while crying. I can't find my daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the airport noise. "What's your name, honey?" "Isabella." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Isabella Reyes." "Okay, Isabella. I'm Jonathan, and that's my son Tommy over there. He gestured toward Tommy, who was watching with curious eyes. "Can you tell me what happened? Where did you last see your daddy?" Isabella's lower lip trembled. "We were supposed to meet someone here, but then Daddy got a phone call and he seemed really scared. He told me to wait right here on this bench and not to move no matter what. He said he'd be right back, but that was, She looked around desperately. "I don't know how long ago. A really long time." Jonathan checked his watch. The announcement. A board showed that most flights had been on time throughout the day, which meant if her father had left her here, it hadn't been due to a flight delay. "Did your daddy say who you were meeting?" Isabella shook her head. "Just that it was important business, but he looked really worried, more worried than I've ever seen him." She clutched her backpack tighter. "He gave me this and told me to keep it safe no matter what." Something cold settled in Jonathan's stomach. A father doesn't just abandon his child at an airport, especially not a child who was clearly well cared for and loved. Either something had happened to Isabella's father, or he'd left her here for a reason that had nothing to do with normal. Travel plans. "Isabella, do you remember what your daddy was wearing?" "A dark suit. He always wears dark suits for business meetings. And his special watch, the one with all the numbers." Jonathan looked around the terminal with new eyes. Airport security, busy travelers, the constant flow of people. If someone wanted to disappear or make someone else disappear, this would be the perfect place. Anonymous, chaotic, with multiple exits and thousands of people. "Honey, do you have a phone number for your daddy? Maybe we can call him." Isabella nodded and recited a number, which Jonathan immediately dialed. It went straight to voicemail, not even a personalized message, just the generic recording. "Let's try something else," Jonathan said, his mind racing. "Do you know your address? Maybe we can call your mommy." Isabella's face crumpled again. "Mommy died 2 years ago. It's just me and Daddy now." She looked down at her expensive shoes. "We live in lots of different places. Daddy says we move around for his work." Red flags were going up in Jonathan's mind like fireworks. A single father who moved frequently, expensive clothes on the child, a business meeting at an airport that resulted in abandonment, and a backpack the child was told to guard with her life. None of this added up to normal circumstances. His phone buzzed again, Rick increasingly frantic about the water main situation. "Listen, Isabella," Jonathan said, making a decision that would change everything. "I think we should find a security guard and report that your daddy is missing. They have ways to help find people in airports." "No!" Isabella's response was immediate and fierce. "Daddy said never talk to security or police. He said there are bad people who want to hurt us, and some of them wear uniforms." Jonathan felt like he'd stepped into quicksand. Every instinct told him this situation was dangerous, that he should walk away and let airport authorities handle it. But looking at Isabella's terrified face, he knew he couldn't abandon a child, no matter how complicated the circumstances. "Okay, no security for now," he said. "But Isabella, I need you to think really hard. Did your daddy say anything else? Any clues about where he was going or who he was meeting?" Isabella was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "He got a text message right before the phone call. After he read it, he got really pale and said a bad word. Then his phone rang, and he talked to someone for a few minutes. I couldn't hear everything, but he kept saying, 'I won't let you hurt her,' and 'the deal is off.'" Jonathan's blood ran cold. This wasn't about a missed connection or travel confusion. Isabella's father had been threatened, and somehow Isabella herself was involved. "Dad!" Tommy's voice carried across the gate area. "Mom's plane is here." Jonathan looked toward the arrival board and saw that Flight 447 had indeed landed. In a few minutes, Sarah would be walking through that door expecting to collect Tommy for their weekend together. But he couldn't just leave Isabella alone, and he couldn't take her with him without raising questions he wasn't prepared to answer. "Isabella, I need to do something really quick, but I promise I won't leave you alone. Can you come sit with me and my son for just a few minutes? Isabella nodded, clutching her backpack as she followed Jonathan back to where Tommy was gathering his coloring supplies. Tommy, this is Isabella. She's waiting for her dad, too. Tommy looked up at Isabella with the frank curiosity of childhood. How come you're crying, Tommy? Jonathan warned gently. It's okay, Isabella said, wiping her eyes. I'm just worried about my daddy. Sarah emerged from the jetway looking polished and professional, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the flight. She spotted Jonathan and Tommy immediately, her expression brightening as she saw her son. There's my boy. Sarah swooped down to hug Tommy, then looked up at Jonathan with the careful politeness they'd developed since the divorce. Flight was smooth. We should have him back by 8 on Sunday. Actually, Sarah, I need to talk to you for a second. Jonathan glanced meaningfully at Isabella. Privately, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sarah's lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. She followed Jonathan a few steps away, leaving Tommy to shyly introduce himself to Isabella. What's going on, John? Jonathan kept his voice low. That little girl has been abandoned here. Her father left hours ago and never came back. She's terrified and won't let me call security. Then, call Child Protective Services. This isn't your problem. She's 8 years old, Sarah. I can't just walk away. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Despite their differences, she knew Jonathan's protective instincts were one of his defining characteristics. It's what had made him a good father. Even if it hadn't made him a good husband for her ambitious lifestyle. What do you want to do? I don't know yet, but I can't leave her here alone. Sarah checked her watch. We have dinner reservations at 6. Tommy's been looking forward to this weekend. Jonathan looked back at Isabella, who was showing Tommy something in her backpack while keeping it mostly closed. Whatever was in there, she was guarding it carefully. Take Tommy, Jonathan said finally. I'll figure this out and call you later. Jonathan, please, Sarah. I know it's not my responsibility, but I can't live with myself if something happens to her. Sarah studied his face for a moment, recognizing the stubborn set of his jaw that she'd seen countless times during their marriage. Fine, but if this turns into something dangerous, you call the police immediately. Promise me. I promise. Sarah collected Tommy, who waved goodbye to Isabella with the easy friendliness of childhood. Maybe we can play again sometime, he called. Out as Sarah led him toward the exit, Jonathan watched them go, then returned to Isabella, who was sitting very still on the bench. So it's just us now, he said, settling beside her. Want to tell me more about what's in that backpack you're protecting? Isabella looked around nervously, then unzipped the bag just enough for Jonathan to glimpse inside. What he saw made his breath catch. Stacks of cash. Not bills for everyday spending, but thick bundles of hundreds and fifties held together with rubber bands. More money than Jonathan had ever seen in one place. Daddy said this is very important, Isabella whispered. He said people would do bad things to get it, but I had to keep it safe until he came back. Jonathan's mouth went dry. Whatever Isabella's father was involved in, it was serious enough that someone was willing to threaten a child. And now Jonathan was sitting in an airport with that child and what looked like enough cash to buy a house. His phone rang, startling them both. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Jonathan Mitchell? The voice was smooth, professional, with just a hint of an accent Jonathan couldn't place. Who's asking? I believe you have something that belongs to me. A little girl with dark hair sitting in gate B17. Jonathan's blood turned to ice. He looked around the terminal, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Mitchell, I know exactly where you are and who you're with. Isabella's father made some very poor choices, but the child is innocent. Bring her to the parking garage, level 3, section C, in exactly 15 minutes. Come alone, and no one gets hurt. And if I don't? Then you'll find out why Isabella's father was so frightened. 15 minutes, Mr. Mitchell. Don't make me wait. The line went dead. Jonathan looked at Isabella, who had gone pale. Someone's coming for you, isn't it? She nodded, tears starting again. Daddy said this might happen. He said if bad men came looking for me, I should run and hide until he found me. Jonathan's construction worker instincts kicked in, the same ones that had kept him alive working on high-rise buildings and dangerous job sites. When something felt wrong, you trusted that feeling and got to safety. Isabella, we're going to walk very calmly to the bathroom over there, okay? Just like we're not worried about anything. They stood up, Jonathan scanning the terminal for anyone who looked out of place. Near the coffee shop, a man in a black jacket was talking on his phone while watching their gate. By the bookstore, another man was pretending to read a magazine, but kept glancing in their direction. Don't look around, Jonathan murmured to Isabella. Just stay close to me. They made it to the family restroom, and Jonathan locked the door. Behind them. Okay, Isabella, I need you to tell me everything you know about your daddy's business. Everything. Isabella sat on the small bench and hugged her backpack. Daddy works with computers and numbers. He says he helps people move their money around so the government can't take too much of it. But lately he's been really worried. He keeps saying someone wants to hurt us because of something he knows. What kind of something? I don't know. But a few weeks ago, we had to leave our house in Miami really fast in the middle of the night. Daddy packed our suitcases, and we drove to the airport without even turning off the lights. Jonathan's phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. 14 minutes. His mind raced through options. The parking garage was obviously a trap, but staying in the airport meant being cornered with nowhere to run. And involving airport security might put Isabella in more danger if her father had been right about not trusting authorities. Isabella, is there anyone else your daddy trusts? Grandparents, friends, anyone? She shook her head. Daddy says we can't trust anyone because his old friends might be working for the bad people now. Jonathan made a decision that went against every rational thought in his head. We're not going to that parking garage. We're going to get out of here and figure this out somewhere safe. But where can we go? Jonathan thought about his small house. In Thornton, his quiet neighborhood, where the biggest excitement was usually someone's sprinkler system malfunctioning. It wasn't much, but it was home, and it was 20 miles from the airport. I know a place, but first, we need to get out of here without those men seeing us. He pulled out his phone and called Rick. Rick, it's Jonathan. I need a huge favor, and I can't explain why right now. What kind of favor? I need you to come to the airport and create a distraction, something big enough to get security's attention focused somewhere else for about 5 minutes. Jonathan, what the hell is going on? I can't explain right now, but I promise I'll tell you everything later. Can you do this for me? Rick was quiet for a moment. They'd been friends since high school, had worked construction together for over a decade. What kind of distraction? I don't know. Maybe have a really loud argument with someone at the ticket. Or counter? Anything that draws attention away from gate B-17. This better not get me arrested. It won't, I promise. Give me 20 minutes to get there. Jonathan hung up and looked at Isabella. We're going to wait here until my friend creates a distraction. Then we're going to walk very quickly to the exit. Can you do that? Isabella nodded, but Jonathan could see she was scared. Hell, he was scared too. 12 hours ago, his biggest worry had been whether the Henderson project would stay on schedule. Now he was harboring a child with a backpack full of cash, while dangerous people stalked them through an airport. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Your 15 minutes are up, Mr. Mitchell. I'm not coming to your parking garage. That's unfortunate. Perhaps you'd like to reconsider after you see what happened to Isabella's father. The phone buzzed with an incoming photo message. Jonathan opened it and immediately wished he hadn't. A man in a dark suit, lying motionless in what looked like a hotel room. Even from the grainy photo, Jonathan could see enough to know the man was dead. "Daddy," Isabella whispered. Seeing Jonathan's expression, Jonathan quickly closed the phone, but it was too late. Isabella had seen enough. "They hurt my daddy," she said, her voice eerily calm, in the way children sometimes get when faced with trauma too. Big to process. "Isabella, I'm so sorry." She was quiet for a long moment, then looked up at Jonathan with eyes that seemed far too old for her 8-year-old face. "He told me this might happen. He said if something bad happened to him, I should find someone good to help me, someone who would protect me even if it was dangerous." "What else did he tell you?" "He said, the money in my backpack is just the beginning. He said there are accounts with numbers that bad people want, and that's why they want to hurt me, because I'm the only one who knows where to find the real money." Jonathan felt like he was drowning. This wasn't just about cash in a backpack. This was about bank accounts, possibly offshore money, the kind of financial crimes that made headlines and destroyed lives. His phone buzzed with another text. "We know where you are. Come out now, or we'll come in." Through the small gap under the bathroom door, Jonathan could see shadows moving. Multiple sets of feet positioning themselves outside. They were trapped. Jonathan's heart pounded as he watched the shadows shift under the bathroom door. 3, maybe 4 sets of feet. Professional. Footwear, polished shoes that meant business. He looked at Isabella, who sat perfectly still on the bench, her small hands gripping the backpack straps like they were the only things keeping her tethered to earth. The building's ventilation system hummed above them, and Jonathan, suddenly, remembered something from his construction days. Airport bathrooms were connected to maintenance corridors. He'd worked on similar buildings before. The ceiling tiles in older terminals were often removable for plumbing access. "Isabella, I need you to climb on my shoulders," he whispered. She looked confused but didn't question him. Years of moving around with her father had probably taught her to trust quickly when survival was at stake. Jonathan boosted her up toward the ceiling. "Push on that tile right there, the one that looks slightly different." Isabella pressed against the ceiling tile, and it shifted. Behind it was a narrow maintenance space, just wide enough for a small person to crawl through. "I can't fit up there, but you can," Jonathan whispered urgently. "Crawl straight ahead until you find another bathroom or an exit. Don't come down until you're sure you're safe. What about you? I'll be right behind you. There's another way out." He was lying, but Isabella needed to believe it. A sharp knock echoed through the bathroom door. "Mr. Mitchell, we know you're in there. Open the door and this can all be resolved peacefully." Jonathan lifted Isabella higher. "Go, now. Remember what your daddy taught you about staying hidden." Isabella hesitated for just a moment, then disappeared into the ceiling space with surprising agility. The tile slid back into place just as the bathroom door exploded inward. 3 men in dark clothing entered, moving with military precision. The leader was tall and lean, with grey hair and cold eyes. The other 2 flanked him, hands inside their jackets where weapons would be concealed. "Where is she?" the leader asked calmly. "Where's who?" Jonathan's voice was steadier than he felt. "Mr. Mitchell, we traced Isabella's father's phone to this location. We know you've been talking to her. Where is the child?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The man nodded to one of his associates, who stepped forward and grabbed Jonathan's shirt, slamming him against the tile wall. "Let's try this again. Eduardo Reyes stole something very valuable from our employer. His daughter has information we need to recover it. You were seen talking to her at gate B17, Eduardo Reyes. So that was Isabella's father's real name." Jonathan filed the information away while trying to look appropriately confused. "Look, I saw a crying kid and asked if she was okay. That's it. Security probably has her by now." The leader studied Jonathan's face with the intensity of someone trained to detect lies. "You're a construction worker from Thornton, Colorado. Divorced, struggling financially, custody of your son on weekends. Not the type of man who usually..." gets involved in international financial crimes. The fact that they knew so much about him in such a short time was terrifying. These weren't common criminals. They had resources, organization, the kind of backing that could access personal information within hours. Then you know I'm nobody special, just a guy trying to pick up his kid. Perhaps, but Eduardo Reyes was also nobody special until he decided to steal $50 million from people who don't forgive such transgressions. $50 million. Jonathan tried to keep his expression neutral, but inside his mind reeled. Whatever Isabella was carrying wasn't just pocket money. It was connected to a theft that could get people killed. Above them, he heard the faintest sound of movement in the ceiling. Isabella was still up there, hopefully making her way to safety. I told you, I don't know anything about stolen money. The leader's phone buzzed. He answered it without taking his eyes off Jonathan. Yes? A pause. Are you certain? Another pause, longer this time. Understood. He hung up and regarded Jonathan with something that might have been respect. It seems Eduardo Reyes was more clever than we gave him credit for. The money isn't in accounts we can simply access. It's been moved through a series of shell companies and encrypted wallets. The only way to recover it is through a specific sequence of codes and passwords. Still doesn't have anything to do with me. No, but it has everything to do with an 8-year-old girl who spent the last 6 months watching her father set up the most sophisticated money laundering operation we've ever encountered. Children notice things, Mr. Mitchell. They remember details adults forget. Sequences of numbers, passwords spoken aloud, patterns in behavior. Jonathan realized what they were really after. Isabella wasn't just a victim. She was a living key to $50 million. Her father had probably involved her in his work without realizing it, teaching her things that seemed innocent but were actually pieces of a much larger puzzle. Even if that's true, the kid's gone. Like I said, security probably found her. We've been monitoring airport security frequencies. No lost child has been reported, which means she's still here somewhere, waiting for her opportunity to escape. The BI leader gestured to his men. Search every inch of this bathroom. Check the ceiling, the vents, anywhere a small person could hide. Jonathan's blood ran cold as one of the men pulled over a trash can and stood on it to examine the ceiling tiles. In seconds, they'd discover Isabella's escape route. His phone rang. The sound was jarringly loud in the tense bathroom. Rick's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, the leader commanded. Speakerphone. Jonathan accepted the call and pressed the speaker button. Hey, Rick. John, I'm at the airport like you asked. What kind of distraction do you need? I'm standing outside. Security right now, feeling like an idiot. The leader nodded approvingly. He'd anticipated this backup plan. Actually, Rick, change of plans. I'm good here. Thanks anyway. You sure? I drove all the way out here. Yeah, everything's fine. I'll call you later. All right, but you owe me an explanation and a beer. Jonathan ended the call, hoping Rick would pick up on the forced casualness in his voice. They'd known each other long enough that Rick might sense something was wrong. The man searching the ceiling found the displaced tile. Sir, there's a maintenance in corridor up here. Recent disturbance in the dust patterns. The leader smiled without warmth. Excellent. She can't have gone far. These corridors connect to the mechanical rooms and eventually to external vents. But it's a maze up there. She'll get lost long before she finds an exit. Jonathan felt sick. Isabella was trapped in a maze of air ducts and maintenance spaces, alone and terrified, while armed men hunted her like an animal. You're going to help us find her, the leader continued. She trusts you. When she realizes she's trapped up there, she'll come back to the last place she felt safe, and you're going to convince her to come down. I won't help you hurt a child. Mr. Mitchell, we're not interested in hurting anyone. We simply want to recover stolen property. Once we have the information we need, Isabella will be placed in protective custody until suitable arrangements can be made for her care. Protective custody with who? people who can ensure her safety and her silence. Jonathan didn't believe a word of it. These men hadn't killed Eduardo Reyes just to put his daughter in witness protection. Once they had what they needed from Isabella, she'd become a liability they couldn't afford to leave alive. What's to stop me from screaming for help the moment we leave this bathroom? Your son Tommy. He's at dinner with his mother at Romano's Italian Kitchen on 16th Street. Table 12, by the window. It would be unfortunate if their evening was interrupted by unpleasant visitors. The threat hit Jonathan like a physical blow. They'd been watching Sarah and Tommy, tracking their movements, turning his family into leverage. Whatever he decided to do next, he had to consider that these people could reach the most important person in his life. You bastards. We're practical businessmen, Mr. Mitchell. Cooperation ensures everyone's safety. Resistance accomplishes nothing, except unnecessary suffering. The leader's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it and frowned. It seems we have a complication. Airport security is asking questions about some unusual activity near gate B17. Someone reported seeing a child in distress. Jonathan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe a concerned passenger had noticed Isabella's crying earlier and reported it. We need to move this operation. Mr. Mitchell, you're going to help us locate the girl, and then we're all leaving the airport together, quietly and without incident. Where are we going? Somewhere more private where we can have a proper conversation. With Isabella about her father's business arrangements. Jonathan knew that once they left the airport, Isabella's chances of survival dropped to zero. Whatever happened next had to happen here, in public, where there were witnesses and security cameras and the possibility of help. Above them, the ventilation system made a loud clanking noise, followed by what sounded like something small moving through the ductwork. Isabella was still alive and moving, but she was trapped in a system she didn't understand, probably getting more lost with every turn. She's moving toward the central air handling unit, one of the men reported, listening to the sounds above. If she reaches the main shaft, she could access the entire terminal through the ceiling. Or she could fall 30 feet to the basement level, the leader replied grimly. We need to intercept her before she reaches the junction point. He turned to Jonathan. You're going to call out to her. Tell her it's safe to come down. Tell her you have a way out. She won't believe me. Then make her believe. Her life depends on it. The leader's phone rang. He answered it with growing irritation. What? His expression darkened as he listened. How many? A pause. Understood. Handle it quietly. He hung up and looked at his men with barely controlled anger. We have multiple problems. Airport security is conducting a sweep of this concourse, looking for a missing child. Additionally, someone called in a suspicious persons report. 3 men in dark clothing following a father and daughter at gate B17. Jonathan's heart leapt. Rick. Rick had noticed something was wrong during their phone call and had taken action. His friend was creating the distraction Jonathan had originally asked for, just an hour too late and in a completely different way. Sir, we should abort, one of the men suggested. Too much exposure, too many witnesses. Negative. We're too close to recovering the assets. Eduardo Reyes died before giving us the access codes. The girl is our only remaining link to $50 million. The sounds in the ceiling had stopped. Either Isabella had found somewhere to hide, or she'd reached a dead end. Jonathan hoped desperately it was the former. Mr. Mitchell, you have 60 seconds to get that girl to come down, or we start making phone calls to Romano's Italian Kitchen. Jonathan looked up at the ceiling tiles, knowing Isabella was somewhere above them, probably listening to every word. He had to find a way to communicate with her that would sound cooperative to her captors, but actually warn her to stay hidden. Isabella, he called softly. It's Jonathan. I know you're scared, but these men just want to ask you some questions about your daddy. They promise they won't hurt you. No response from above. Your daddy left you with me because he trusted me to keep you safe. These people can help us find him." Still no sound from the ceiling. The leader was growing impatient. "Try again. Make it more convincing." "Isabella, honey, I know your daddy told you not to trust strangers, but sometimes you have to trust someone. I promise I won't let anything bad happen to you." This time, there was a soft rustling sound directly above them. Isabella was listening, trying to decide what to do. "That's it," the leader murmured. "Keep talking. Do you remember what your daddy told you about being brave, about doing the right thing even when you're scared? Coming down is the right thing to do. We can't solve this problem while you're hiding up there." The ceiling tile above the sinks shifted slightly. Isabella's small voice came through the opening, muffled but audible. "Jonathan, are you really okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart." "Come on down. What about the bad men Daddy warned me about?" Jonathan looked at the leader, who was listening intently. "To every word. These aren't the bad men your daddy was worried about. These are different people, people who can help us." The tile moved more noticeably, and Jonathan could see the edge of Isabella's pink backpack. "I'm scared." "I know you are. But I'm right here, and I won't let anything happen to you. Do you trust me?" A long pause. Then, slowly, Isabella's legs appeared through the ceiling opening. She was coming down. The leader smiled with satisfaction and gestured for his men to be ready. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing the bathroom in an eerie red glow. In the confusion, Jonathan heard Isabella drop to the floor with a soft thud. "Grab the girl," the leader shouted. But Isabella had disappeared again. In the few seconds of darkness, she'd slipped away like a ghost. The bathroom door burst open, and airport security officers poured in, flashlights cutting through the dim emergency lighting. "Everyone freeze! Hands where we can see them!" The leader and his men immediately raised their hands, transforming from dangerous predators into confused travelers caught in an unfortunate situation. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," the leader said smoothly. "We were trying to help this gentleman find a lost child when the power went out." Jonathan realized how the situation must look to security. 4 men in a bathroom during a power outage, with no sign of the child who'd been reported missing. Without Isabella present, it was his word against theirs. "Sir, we need you to step out of the restroom," one of the officers said to Jonathan. "We have reports of a missing child in this area." "That's right," Jonathan said quickly. "Her name is Isabella. She's 8 years old, dark hair, wearing a navy dress. She was abandoned here by her father hours ago." "Can you describe the father?" Jonathan glanced at the leader, who was watching the exchange with interest. "I never saw him," the girl said. "He left her here and never came back. Sir, we'll need you to come with us to file a formal report." As they were escorted out of the bathroom, Jonathan scanned the ceiling frantically. Where had Isabella gone? How had she disappeared so quickly in the darkness? The concourse was in chaos. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows everywhere, and travelers were milling around in confusion, talking on cell phones and demanding answers from airline personnel. "What happened to the power?" Jonathan asked one of the security officers. "Electrical problem in the main terminal. Backup generators are running, but it'll be another hour before full power is restored." An hour. That gave Isabella time to find a better hiding place, but it also gave her captors time to regroup and continue their search. The leader approached Jonathan as they walked toward the security office. "This isn't over, Mr. Mitchell. We know where you live, where you work, where your son goes to school. The girl will surface eventually, and when she does, we'll be waiting." "Security!" Jonathan called out loudly. "This man just threatened me and my family." The leader smiled calmly. "Officer, I simply told Mr. Mitchell that if the missing child surfaces, he should call us immediately. We're private investigators, hired by the family to locate her safely. He handed the security officer a business card that looked completely legitimate. "Mitchell Security Solutions," the officer read. "You're working this case?" "That's correct. The child's family is very wealthy and very concerned about her safety. They hired us to ensure her safe return." Jonathan watched in amazement as the leader completely flipped the narrative. Now he was the concerned professional, while Jonathan looked like an uncooperative witness who was interfering with a legitimate investigation. "Mr. Mitchell," the security officer said, "these gentlemen are here to help. Why don't you tell us everything you know about the missing girl?" Jonathan realized he was walking into a trap. Anything he said would be reported back to Isabella's captors, giving them more information to use in their hunt. "I already told you everything. She was crying, said her father left her, and asked for help. That's all I know." "Did she mention her father's name?" Jonathan hesitated. Eduardo Reyes was already dead. There was no point in protecting his identity now. But Isabella was still alive somewhere in the airport, and any information he gave could be used against her. "She said her name was Isabella, but she didn't mention her last name or her father's name." "What about the backpack she was carrying? Did you see what was inside?" This was the crucial question. If Jonathan admitted he'd seen the money, he'd have to explain why he hadn't immediately reported it to authorities. But if he lied and they somehow knew he'd seen it, his credibility would be destroyed. "She was very protective of it, wouldn't let me look inside." The leader was watching Jonathan's face carefully, evaluating every answer. "Mr. Mitchell, is there anything else you can tell us that might help locate Isabella safely?" Jonathan met the man's cold eyes directly. "Just that she's a scared little girl who needs protection from people who want to hurt her." "No one wants to hurt her," the leader replied smoothly. "We just want to reunite her with her family." "What family? You said her father hired you, but she told me her mother was dead and her father was missing." The leader's expression flickered for just a moment, the first crack in his professional facade. Extended family. Grandparents who are very concerned about her welfare. Jonathan knew he was lying, but proving it in front of airport security would be impossible without evidence. The power suddenly flickered back on, and the terminal's normal lighting blazed to life. Travelers cheered, and the chaos began to subside. As normal operations resumed, "Well, that's better," the security officer said. "Now we can access the full camera system and see if we can track the girl's movements." Jonathan's heart sank. If security cameras had captured Isabella's escape route, her hiding places would be exposed within minutes. But the leader looked pleased. "Excellent. The sooner we locate her, the sooner this situation can be resolved." As they walked toward the security office, Jonathan caught a glimpse of something that made his pulse race. On a bench near gate B19, barely visible behind a newspaper kiosk, sat a small figure in a navy dress. Isabella had found a new hiding spot, and she was watching them. Jonathan forced himself not to react, not to give away her position, but he also realized that her new location was dangerously exposed. The moment security started reviewing camera footage, they'd spot her immediately. He had to find a way to warn her without alerting her captors. But with 3 armed men and airport security watching his every move, his options were rapidly running out. The clock above the departure board showed 4:47 p.m. In just over 3 hours, the airport would begin winding down for the night. Fewer people, fewer distractions, fewer places to hide. Time was running out for both of them. The security office buzzed with activity as officers pulled up camera feeds on multiple monitors. Jonathan sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, watching screen after screen of airport footage, while his mind raced with worry about Isabella's exposed position near gate B19. "Here's the girl at approximately 2:15 p.m., Officer Martinez said, pointing at a monitor showing Isabella sitting alone on the bench where Jonathan had first found her. clearly distressed, no adult supervision. The leader, who had introduced himself to security as Detective Raymond Walsh, leaned forward with professional interest. "Can you track her movements after that point?" "Working on it. The system catalogs facial recognition data, so once we have her locked in." Martinez's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Got her. 2:43 p.m. She's talking to you, Mr. Mitchell." Jonathan watched himself approach Isabella on the screen, remembering how terrified she'd looked. Now he understood why. She'd already known her father was in danger, possibly already dead. "Fast forward to when the power went out," Walsh instructed. The footage jumped ahead, showing the emergency lighting period as grainy infrared images. Jonathan could see himself and the three men entering the bathroom, but the ceiling areas weren't visible from this angle. "Nothing useful during the blackout," Martinez concluded, but once power resumed, he switched to a different camera feed, this one showing the concourse from a wider angle. Jonathan held his breath as the timestamp showed 4:45 p.m., just 2 minutes ago. "There," Walsh said sharply. "Movement behind the newspaper kiosk." Jonathan's heart sank as the camera clearly captured Isabella adjusting her position on the bench. She was trying to stay hidden, but the angle was all wrong. "Gate B19, Martinez noted. "I'll dispatch officers to that location immediately." "Wait," Jonathan said quickly. "She's obviously terrified. If security officers approach her suddenly, she might run and get hurt." Walsh turned to study Jonathan with those cold, calculating eyes. "What do you suggest, Mr. Mitchell?" "Let me approach her first. She trusts me. I can convince her to come quietly." "Absolutely not," Martinez interrupted. "This is a security matter now. We can't have civilians involved in apprehending a minor." "I'm not talking about apprehending her," Jonathan protested. "She's not a criminal. She's a scared kid who needs help." Walsh placed a hand on Martinez's shoulder in a gesture that seemed friendly but carried unmistakable authority. "Officer, Mr. Mitchell has established rapport with the child. Perhaps a gentle approach would be more effective than a show of force." Martinez looked uncertain. "Detective Walsh, procedure requires us to prioritize the child's safety above all else," Walsh interrupted smoothly. "If she runs from uniformed officers and gets lost in the terminal, or worse, tries to leave the building, we could have a much larger problem." Jonathan realized what Walsh was doing. He wanted Jonathan to bring Isabella to him personally, avoiding any chance that she might reveal the truth about her situation to airport security. "I'll go with Mr. Mitchell," Martinez decided. "Plainclothes approach, keep our distance until—" "The child is secure." "An excellent compromise," Walsh agreed. "My team will monitor from here to ensure nothing goes wrong." As they prepared to leave the security office, Jonathan's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Everything okay? Tommy's asking about you." The message reminded him that Walsh's people were still watching his family. Whatever he did next had to account for that threat. They left the security office and walked toward Gate B19, Martinez maintaining a casual distance while speaking quietly into his radio. Jonathan could see Isabella's small form behind the newspaper kiosk, and his heart ached for what she must be going through. "Control, this is Martinez. Moving to intercept the missing child at Gate B19. Have medical standing by in case she needs." Attention, medical attention. Jonathan realized that once Isabella was in official custody, Walsh would find a way to get access to her. A fake medical emergency, a forged court order, or simply the authority that came with his fabricated credentials. They were 50 feet away when Isabella spotted them. Even from that distance, Jonathan could see the terror in her eyes as she recognized him walking with a security officer. She bolted. "Damn it!" Martinez muttered, breaking into a run. "All units, child is mobile, heading toward the main terminal." Isabella moved like a frightened deer, weaving between travelers and baggage, carts with surprising agility. Her small size was an advantage in the crowded terminal. She could slip through gaps that adults couldn't follow. Jonathan ran after them, his construction worker stamina keeping him close behind Martinez. But Isabella had a head start and desperation. On her side, she disappeared into a crowd of passengers near the central hub where multiple concourses intersected. By the time Jonathan and Martinez reached the area, she was gone. Lost visual, Martinez reported into his radio. Subject was last seen heading toward Concourse A. Jonathan scanned the crowd frantically. Concourse A led to international gates. If Isabella got lost in that maze of corridors and shops, it could take hours to find her. There! Martinez pointed toward a coffee shop 50 yards away. Navy dress, dark hair. But when they reached the coffee shop, it was a different child. A girl about Isabella's age, wearing similar clothes, holding her mother's hand while they waited in line. False positive, Martinez radioed. Continuing search in grid pattern. Jonathan's phone rang. Walsh's number. Mr. Mitchell, where is she? We lost her in the crowd. That's unfortunate. Perhaps it's time to try a different approach. What do you mean? Check your text messages. Jonathan's phone buzzed immediately. A photo of Tommy and Sarah at their restaurant table, taken through the window from outside. Tommy was laughing at something Sarah had said, completely unaware that he was being watched by dangerous people. Beautiful family, Walsh continued. It would be a shame if their evening was interrupted. You bastard, leave them out of this. Bring me the girl, Mr. Mitchell. You have 1 hour. The line went dead. Martinez had been listening to the conversation with growing concern. Mr. Mitchell, was that a threat against your family? Jonathan looked at the security officer, weighing his options. Martinez seemed like a decent man trying to do his job, but he was also clearly outmatched by Walsh's sophistication and resources. Officer, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to hear me out completely before you take any action. I'm listening. Those men aren't private investigators. They're criminals who killed Isabella's father and are trying to kidnap her. Martinez stopped walking. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Mitchell. Detective Walsh showed me a photo of Isabella's father's body. They're after money he stole from them. $50 million, and they think Isabella knows how to access it. Do you have any proof of this? Jonathan realized how crazy his story sounded. A construction worker claiming that legitimate-looking investigators were actually international criminals, based on nothing more than a photo on a phone and some threatening phone calls. I know how it sounds, but think about it. If they're really private investigators hired by the family, why haven't they contacted the FBI? Why aren't they working through official channels? And why is that little girl so terrified of them? Martinez was quiet for a moment, considering. Even if what you're saying is true, I can't just ignore procedure. I have to report this to my supervisor. Your supervisor, who's currently reviewing security footage with the same men I'm telling you are criminals. The implication hit Martinez hard. If Jonathan was right, then Walsh and his team were using airport security's own resources to hunt down a child. What do you want me to do? Help me find Isabella before they do. Get her somewhere safe where she can tell her story to people who can protect her. And if you're wrong, if these men really are legitimate investigators and I'm helping you interfere with a missing child case, then I'll take full responsibility. But if I'm right and we don't act, that little girl is going to disappear forever. Martinez made his decision. 1 hour. We find her and get the truth, whatever it is. They split up to cover more ground, agreeing to meet back at the central hub in 30 minutes. Jonathan headed toward the food court, thinking Isabella might look for somewhere with crowds and multiple exits. The Denver Airport food court was a maze of restaurants and seating areas, packed with travelers killing time between flights. Jonathan moved methodically through the space, checking under tables and behind service counters, anywhere a small person might hide. He was approaching a McDonald's when he noticed something odd. A janitor's cart was parked near the restrooms, but there was no janitor in sight. The cart had a large laundry bag hanging from one side, big enough for a child to hide in. Jonathan approached the cart casually, pretending to read his phone. While moving closer, as he passed the laundry bag, he heard the faintest sound of breathing. "Isabella," he whispered without stopping. "It's Jonathan. Don't say anything, just listen." The breathing paused. "Now I'm going to keep walking, but I need you to know that the bad men are using the security officers to help them find you. The only way to stay safe is to get out of the airport." He paused near a trash can, still speaking quietly. "In 5 minutes, I'm going to walk back this way. If you can get out of that bag without being seen, follow me at a distance. We're going to find a way out of here." Jonathan walked away, his heart pounding. He was asking an 8-year-old to make life-or-death decisions, but she'd already proven. She was smarter and more resourceful than most adults he knew. He made a circuit of the food court, checking for Walsh's men or airport security. The area seemed clear, but that could change at any moment. When he returned to the janitor's cart, the laundry bag was still there, but it looked different. Less full, more collapsed. Isabella had gotten out, but where had she gone? "Don't turn. Around," a small voice said behind him. "Keep walking toward the exit." Jonathan continued walking, amazed at how quietly Isabella could move. She was staying close enough to communicate, but far enough away that they wouldn't be seen together by security cameras. "How did you know I was in the bag?" "Lucky guess." "Ah, you okay?" "Scared, but okay. I heard what you said to the security man. Those bad men really killed my daddy, didn't they?" Jonathan's heart broke for her. "I'm sorry, Isabella. Yes, I think they did." She was quiet for a moment. "Daddy said this might happen. He made me memorize some numbers and words, just in case. He said they were very important, and I should never tell them to anyone unless it was life or death." "What kind of numbers and words?" "Bank account numbers, passwords, places where he hid money that belonged to other people." So Walsh had been right. Isabella was the key to recovering the $50 million. But she was also the only living witness to Eduardo Reyes's criminal activities, which made her incredibly valuable to multiple parties. "Isabella, those numbers your daddy made you memorize, they're the reason those men want to hurt you. They think if they get that information, they can steal the money your daddy was protecting. He said the money didn't really belong to the bad men anyway. He said they stole it from regular people, and he was trying to give it back. A whistleblower. Eduardo Reyes hadn't been a simple thief. He'd been trying to expose financial crimes by stealing evidence in the form of money and documentation. Do you know who your daddy was trying to give the money back to? He said there was a lady reporter who was going to help him tell everyone the truth, but then the bad men found out, and we had to run away." Jonathan's mind raced. An investigative journalist, financial crimes, $50 million in stolen evidence. This was much bigger than a simple theft. Eduardo Reyes had been trying to expose what sounded like a major corruption scheme. What was the reporter's name? "I don't remember her whole name, but Daddy called her Ms. Chen. He said she worked for a big newspaper." They were approaching the exit to the baggage claim area, but Jonathan could see security checkpoints ahead. There was no way to leave the secure area of the airport without going through official channels. "Isabella, we can't get out this way. They'll be watching all the exits." "There's another way," she said quietly. "When I was hiding in the ceiling, I saw service doors that the workers use. They don't have metal detectors or security guards." "Show me." Isabella led him back into the terminal, but toward a less crowded area where the cleaning and maintenance operations were located. She moved with the confidence of someone who had learned to be invisible, slipping between groups of travelers, without attracting attention. There, she pointed toward a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." "I saw workers going in and out through there. They were carrying cleaning supplies and tools." Jonathan tried the door handle. Locked, but it was a standard key lock, not an electronic security system. His construction experience included working around locked buildings. Sometimes you needed access to utility rooms and mechanical spaces that weren't on the general contractor's key ring. He pulled out his multi-tool and examined the lock. It was an older model, the kind that could be picked with patience and the right technique. "Keep watch," he told Isabella. "Let me know if anyone's coming." It took 3 minutes of careful work before the lock clicked open. Jonathan felt a surge of pride at the skill he'd learned working construction jobs where plans didn't always match reality. "Got it. Come on." They slipped through the door into a utilitarian corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits. The air smelled of cleaning chemicals and machine oil, and the fluorescent lighting was harsh and institutional. "Which way?" Jonathan asked. Isabella pointed down the corridor. "I think the exit is that way. I could see daylight through some of the vents." They moved quickly through the maintenance area, passing storage rooms and equipment lockers. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, and Jonathan worried that they were making too much noise. A voice behind them made them both freeze. Well, well, Mr. Mitchell and the elusive Isabella. They turned to see Walsh standing at the entrance to the corridor, flanked by his 2 associates. Somehow, they'd anticipated this escape route. "How did you—" Jonathan started. "We've been monitoring the maintenance areas since the power outage," Walsh explained. "Hidden cameras, motion sensors. Did you really think a construction worker could outsmart professionals?" Isabella pressed against Jonathan's side, clutching her backpack. "It's over, Mr. Mitchell. Bring the girl, and no one else gets hurt." "I already told you I won't help you hurt a child." Walsh pulled out his phone and showed them the screen, a live video feed of Tommy and Sarah at the restaurant, unaware they were being watched. "One phone call, Mr. Mitchell. That's all it takes." Jonathan looked down at Isabella, seeing his own desperation reflected in her dark eyes. They were trapped in a concrete corridor, with no escape route and no way to call for help. But Isabella was reaching into her backpack, and when she pulled her hand out, she was holding something that made Walsh's eyes widen with greed. A small, digital device like a USB drive, but more sophisticated. It had a tiny LED screen showing encrypted data scrolling past too fast to read. "You want the money?" Isabella said, her voice steadier than an 8-year-old should be. "This is everything. All the passwords, all the account numbers, everything Daddy made me memorize." "Give it to me," Walsh commanded. "Let Jonathan and his family go first." Walsh smiled coldly. "You're not in a position to negotiate, little girl." "Yes, I am," Isabella said, and pressed a button on the device. The LED screen flashed red, and a countdown timer appeared. 10, 9, 8. "What did you do?" Walsh demanded. "Daddy showed me the self-destruct function. In 7 seconds, everything gets erased forever." "Stop it! Promise you'll let Jonathan's family go." 4, 3, "Fine, I promise. Stop the countdown." Isabella pressed another button, and the timer froze at 0002. "Now call your people and tell them to leave Tommy and Sarah alone." Walsh pulled out his phone with shaking hands and made the call. "Stand down from the restaurant. Fall back to secondary positions." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Isabella asked. "Because that device is worth $50 million, and I'm not stupid enough to lose it over 2 people I was never planning to hurt anyway." Jonathan realized that Isabella had just saved his family's lives, but she'd also painted an even bigger target on her own back. The device she was holding was apparently the key to everything: the stolen money, the evidence, the proof of the corruption her father had died trying to expose. "Now," Walsh continued, "give me the device, and we can all walk away from this." "I have a better idea," Isabella said, and before anyone could stop her, she pressed the button again. This time, she didn't stop the countdown. The device flashed bright red, then went completely dark. Walsh screamed in rage and lunged toward her, but Jonathan stepped between them. "She destroyed it," Jonathan said with amazement. "She destroyed the only copy." "You little bitch," Walsh snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "I did what Daddy told me to do," Isabella said calmly. "He said if the bad men ever caught me, I should make sure they never got the money." Walsh pulled out a gun, his professional composure finally cracking. "Maybe I can't get the money, but I can make sure you never tell anyone about this." "That would be a mistake," a new voice said from behind them. Everyone turned to see Officer Martinez and 3 other security officers, weapons drawn. "Detective Walsh, you're under arrest for making terroristic threats against a minor." Walsh's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, calculation, then resigned acceptance. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can," Martinez said. "Mr. Mitchell's story checked out. We contacted the FBI about Eduardo Reyes, and it turns out he was a protected witness in a federal investigation. We've been looking for his daughter for 3 days. Walsh and his men were handcuffed and led away, but Jonathan knew this wasn't really over. If Eduardo Reyes had been a federal witness, then the people trying to silence him had resources that went far beyond what they'd seen today. As they walked back toward the terminal, Isabella slipped her hand into Jonathan's. "Is it really over?" she asked. Jonathan looked down at the brave little girl who had just sacrificed $50 million to protect people she barely knew. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Neither of them realized that the real danger was just beginning. The FBI field office in downtown Denver buzzed with activity even at 7 p.m. on a Saturday. Agent Rebecca Lawson had been working the Eduardo Reyes case for 6 months, ever since. The financial analyst had first approached the Bureau with evidence of a massive money laundering operation. Now sitting across from Jonathan Mitchell and the missing witness's daughter, she was trying to piece together the final hours of a man who had died protecting secrets worth billions. "Isabella, I know this is hard, but I need you to tell me exactly what your father said before he left you at the airport," Agent Lawson said gently. She was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a patient demeanor that came from years of interviewing traumatized witnesses. Isabella sat curled up in an oversized chair, still clutching her pink backpack, even though the device inside was now worthless. Jonathan sat beside her, having refused to leave even when the FBI suggested he'd done enough. "Daddy got a phone call around lunchtime," Isabella began. "We were at the hotel, and he was working on his computer like always. But when he answered the phone, his face got really white. Did you hear any of the conversation?" "A little bit. He kept saying, 'She's just a child,' and this wasn't part of the deal. Then he hung up and started packing our suitcases, really. Fast." Agent Lawson made notes on her tablet. "What happened next?" "We drove to the airport, but Daddy kept checking the mirrors like he thought someone was following us. He parked in the garage and we went inside, but then his phone buzzed with a text message." "Did you see what the message said?" Isabella nodded. "It was a picture of me walking into school last month, with words that said, 'We know where to find her.'" Jonathan felt sick. These people had been watching Isabella for months, planning this confrontation, waiting for the right moment to use her as leverage against her father. "That's when Daddy knew he had to do something," Isabella continued. "He took me to that bench and gave me the device. He said if anything happened to him, I should find someone good to help me, and I should make sure the bad people never got the information." "Isabella, the device you destroyed, do you remember any of the information it contained?" Isabella was quiet for a long moment. "Daddy made me practice remembering numbers and words, but he said I should only tell them to the lady reporter or to FBI people if something bad happened." "We are FBI people," Agent Lawson said gently, "and we're here to help. But how do I know you're really good FBI people and not bad FBI people? It was a heartbreaking question from a child who had learned that not all adults in authority could be trusted. Agent Lawson pulled out her badge and ID, showing them to Isabella. "This is my real identification. You can call the FBI office yourself and ask them to verify who I am." Isabella studied the badge carefully. "Daddy showed me what real FBI badges look like. He said there are people who make fake ones." "Smart." "Daddy," Agent Lawson said, "what else did he teach you about staying safe?" "He said, if I ever had to tell the secrets, I should make sure there were lots of people listening, not just one or two. He said, bad people can pretend to be good people. When no one else is watching, Jonathan realized what Isabella was asking for. She wanted protection, not just from the criminals who had killed her father, but from the possibility of corruption within the system itself. "Isabella, what if Agent Lawson brought in other agents, and maybe some people from the newspaper Daddy was working with? The lady reporter Daddy talked about?" Isabella said, her face brightening slightly. "Ms. Chen. He said she was brave and wanted to help people know the truth." Agent Lawson looked up from her notes. "Margaret Chen from the Washington Herald. I don't know her first name, but Daddy said she worked for a big newspaper." "Margaret. Chen has been investigating financial crimes for years. She's the one who first alerted us to the possibility of large-scale money laundering in several major corporations." Agent Lawson pulled out her phone. "I can call her right now." Isabella nodded eagerly. "Daddy said she had curly red hair and wore glasses with purple frames." Agent Lawson smiled. "That's definitely Margaret Chen." 20 minutes later, Margaret Chen arrived at the FBI office via video conference from Washington, D.C. Her curly red hair was slightly messy from being called away from her weekend, and her purple-framed glasses reflected the light from her computer screen. "Isabella?" Miss Chen's voice was warm and concerned. "Honey, I'm so sorry about your father. He was a very brave man." Isabella moved closer to the laptop screen. "Ms. Chen, Daddy said you were going to help him tell everyone about the bad people." "That's right. Your daddy gave us information about people who were stealing money from regular families, money that was supposed to help them buy houses and send their kids to college. We've been working together to make sure those people get punished. But now Daddy's gone." "Yes, and I'm very sorry about that. But the work he was doing, the important work of helping people, that doesn't have to stop. You can help us finish what he started." Isabella looked around the room at Agent Lawson, at Jonathan, at the other FBI personnel who had gathered to hear her story. "Daddy made me memorize everything because he said computers could be hacked and papers could be stolen, but memories were safe as long as I was safe." "What kind of things did he make you memorize?" Agent Lawson asked. Isabella took a deep breath. Bank account numbers in 7 different countries, passwords for computer systems, names of people who were moving the stolen money, and dates, lots and lots of dates when bad things happened. For the next hour, Isabella recited information that made Agent Lawson's eyes widen with each revelation. Account numbers in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands and Panama, login credentials for offshore banking systems, names of executives, politicians, and financial advisors who had been complicit in what appeared to be one of the largest money laundering operations in U.S. history. "My God," Margaret Chen whispered, as Isabella finished reciting the last set of numbers. Eduardo wasn't just documenting one company's crimes. He'd uncovered an entire network. "How much money are we talking about?" Jonathan asked. Agent Lawson was doing calculations on her computer. "Based on what Isabella just told us, we're looking at potentially over $2 billion that was stolen from pension funds, insurance settlements, and government assistance programs." $2 billion. Jonathan tried to wrap his mind around a number so large it was almost meaningless. That was money that should have gone to helping families, to funding schools and hospitals, to providing for people who needed it most. "The people who killed Daddy," Isabella said quietly. They were stealing money from kids like Tommy. Among others, yes, Agent Lawson confirmed. The pension fund thefts alone affected thousands of families. Isabella's expression hardened in a way that was disturbing to see on an 8-year-old's face. Then we have to stop them. We will, Margaret Chen promised from the screen. Isabella, thanks to what you've just told us, we can trace every stolen dollar and put the people responsible in prison for a very long time. But what happens to me now? Isabella asked, the brave facade cracking to reveal the scared little girl underneath. Agent Lawson leaned forward. You'll be placed in protective custody until this case goes to trial. We have safe houses where you'll be protected by federal marshals. Will I ever get to see Jonathan again? Jonathan felt his heart clench. In the space of a few hours, this remarkable child had become important to him in a way he couldn't fully explain. The thought of her disappearing into witness protection, alone and cut off from everyone she'd come to trust, was unbearable. I don't know, Agent Lawson said honestly. Witness protection means keeping you completely separated from your previous life for your own safety. But Jonathan saved me. He protected me when no one else would. And we're very grateful for that, but now it's our job to keep you safe. Isabella looked around the room with the same calculating expression her father must have had when he decided to become a whistleblower. What if I don't want to go into hiding? Isabella, these people killed your father. They won't hesitate to kill you too if they get the chance. But if I hide, they'll just find other ways to steal money from families. Daddy said the only way to stop bad people is to make sure everyone knows what they're doing. Margaret Chen spoke up from the screen. Isabella, what are you thinking? I want to help you tell the story. I want people to know that my daddy died trying to protect their money, and I want the bad people to go to prison. Agent Lawson shook her head. That's not possible. You're a minor, and you're a witness in a federal case. We can't expose you to that kind of danger. What if there was a way to tell the story without putting Isabella in danger? Jonathan asked. Such as? Jonathan looked at Isabella, seeing the determination in her eyes. What if she testified by video from a secure location? What if her identity was protected, but her story still got told? The defense attorneys would demand the right to cross-examine her in person, Agent Lawson explained, and there's no way to keep her identity completely secret if she's a witness in a public trial. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Ms. Chen, when you write stories about bad people, do you always use real names? Not always. Sometimes we use pseudonyms to protect sources. Could you write a story about what happened without using my real name? Margaret Chen looked thoughtful. Possibly, but Isabella, even if we don't use your name, people involved in this case would know who you are. That doesn't really solve the safety problem. What if... Isabella paused, working through an idea. What if we made them think I was somewhere else? What if we let them think I went into hiding, but really I was somewhere safe where I could still help? Jonathan realized what she was suggesting. You want to fake going into witness protection? Sort of. What if everyone thinks I disappeared, but really I'm staying with someone they'd never suspect? Agent Lawson followed her logic. You're talking about an unofficial arrangement, staying with a private citizen instead of going through official channels. Is that legal? Jonathan asked. It's complicated. Technically, we have a responsibility to place her in official protective custody, but if she's with a trusted adult who agrees to keep her safe, I'll do it, Jonathan said without hesitation. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. Jonathan, Agent Lawson said carefully, you understand what you're volunteering for. These people have already threatened your family. Taking Isabella into your home would put you all at even greater risk. My family is already at risk. At Least this way, I can help protect her while you build your case." "Daddy would like Jonathan," Isabella said with the first smile she'd shown all day. "He always said I was a good judge of character." Margaret Chen leaned forward on the screen. "This is highly irregular, but if it means Isabella feels safe enough to continue helping with the investigation, there would have to be conditions," Agent Lawson said. "Round-the-clock protection, regular check-ins, complete communication blackouts with anyone from your previous life, Isabella." "What about school?" Jonathan asked. "Homeschooling for now. We can arrange for tutoring. And what about my son? I can't put Tommy in danger." Agent Lawson was quiet for a moment. "We could arrange protection for your entire family. Safe house, new identities if necessary." Jonathan thought about Tommy, about the quiet life they'd built in Thornton, about the construction business he'd worked years to establish. He was being asked to give up everything to protect a child he'd known for less than 6 hours. But when he looked at Isabella sitting small and brave in the oversized chair, he knew there was really no choice at all. "Okay," he said, "we'll do it." Isabella's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Jonathan." "There's one more thing," Agent Lawson said. "If you're going to do this, we need to make it look convincing. The people who killed Eduardo have contacts everywhere, law enforcement, government agencies, possibly even within the Bureau itself." "What do you mean?" "We need to stage Isabella's disappearance, make it look like she vanished from federal custody. Create a paper trail that suggests she's in official witness protection somewhere far away." Margaret Chen nodded from the screen. "Meanwhile, she's actually living quietly in Colorado, helping us build the case against the people who killed her father." "It's risky," Agent Lawson warned. "If they discover the deception, they'll come after all of you." Isabella stood up from her chair, looking older than her 8 years. "My daddy died because he wanted to help people. I want to help people too, and I want the bad people who hurt him to go to prison." She walked over to Jonathan and took his. "And, besides, I trust Jonathan. He saved me when he didn't have to. Now I want to help save other families." Agent Lawson looked around the room, reading the expressions on everyone's faces. "All right, but we do this my way, with my rules and my protection. The moment I think any of you are in immediate danger, we abort and go to traditional witness protection." "Agreed," Jonathan said. "Isabella." "Yes, ma'am." "Then let's get started. We have a disappearance to stage and a case to build." As they began planning the elaborate deception that would keep Isabella safe while exposing the people who had killed her father, Jonathan realized his life had just changed in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine. But looking at Isabella's determined expression, he also realized he'd never felt more certain about a decision in his life. Some things were worth the risk. Outside the FBI building, a black sedan pulled away from the curb. The man in the passenger seat lowered his binoculars and made a phone call. "They're moving her tonight. We need to be ready." The game was far from over. The safe house in Golden, Colorado looked like any other suburban home on Maple Street. 2-story colonial with a well-maintained lawn and a basketball hoop in the driveway. But the seemingly ordinary residence was equipped with bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, and a security system that would make Fort Knox envious. Jonathan pulled into the garage at 2 a.m., exhausted from the most surreal day of his life. Isabella had fallen asleep in the passenger seat during the drive from Denver, her pink backpack still clutched against her chest even in sleep. She looked so small and vulnerable that Jonathan's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. This wasn't just about helping the FBI anymore. This child had become his responsibility. Agent Martinez, who had been assigned as their primary protection detail, emerged from the shadows of the garage as Jonathan cut the engine. The events at the airport had earned Martinez a promotion to the federal task force, and his commitment to keeping Isabella safe was absolute. "How is she?" Martinez asked quietly, gesturing toward the sleeping girl. "Holding up better than most," Adults would, Jonathan replied, carefully unbuckling Isabella's seatbelt without waking her. But she's been through hell. They'd spent the last 6 hours at the FBI office creating Isabella's fake disappearance. Security footage had been doctored to show her being loaded into an unmarked van. False paperwork indicated she'd been transferred to a witness protection facility in Montana. Even Agent Lawson's own reports contained deliberate misinformation designed to throw off potential leaks within the system. Jonathan carried Isabella into the house, where Tommy was waiting in the living room with Sarah. The emergency custody modification had been expedited through federal channels. Tommy would be staying with Jonathan indefinitely while they maintained their cover as a normal family. "Dad, is she okay?" Tommy whispered, looking at Isabella with the solemn concern. "The children's show for other children in distress. She's going to be fine, buddy. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Tommy nodded seriously. At 6 years old, he'd been told only that Isabella was in trouble and needed their help. The full truth was too dangerous for a child to know, but Tommy's generous heart had immediately accepted the situation. Sarah stood by the window, her lawyer's instincts clearly troubled by the irregularities of their situation. "Jonathan, I need to understand exactly what we're involved in here. The FBI agents who came to my office wouldn't give me details. Just," said Tommy, "and I were under federal protection." "The less you know, the safer you are," Jonathan said, settling Isabella onto the couch and covering her with a blanket. "That's not good enough. My son is involved in whatever this is." Agent Martinez intervened diplomatically. "Ma'am, I can tell you that your family is helping protect a federal witness in a major financial crimes case. The threat level is significant, but our security measures are comprehensive." Sarah's expression remained skeptical. "And how long is this arrangement supposed to last?" "Until the case goes to trial, probably 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months, Sarah repeated, the implications sinking in. "I'm supposed to put my life on hold for 6 to 8 months. "Mom," Tommy said quietly, "Isabella needs our help. Dad always says we should help people when they're in trouble, out of the mouths of babes." Sarah looked at her son, then at the sleeping girl on the couch, and her expression softened slightly. "Fine, but I want regular updates, and I want to know the moment this situation becomes more dangerous than you're telling me." Over the next 3 days, they established a routine that felt surprisingly normal. Isabella proved to be a remarkably resilient child, adapting to her new environment with the flexibility that came from years of moving around with her father. She and Tommy bonded quickly, their 8-year-old conversations ranging from superhero preferences to the best strategies for building blanket forts. Jonathan worked from home, handling Henderson construction business by phone and email, while Agent Martinez maintained discreet surveillance from a van parked across the street. The neighborhood's other residents had been told that the Mitchells were hosting a foreign exchange student, a cover story that explained Isabella's presence, without raising suspicions. On Thursday morning, Margaret Chen called with an update on the investigation. "We've traced the first set of account numbers Isabella provided," Chen reported via secure video conference. "It's even worse than we thought. This network has been operating for over 15 years, stealing from pension funds across 37 states." Isabella sat at the kitchen table coloring with Tommy while listening to the conversation. She'd insisted on being included in all case discussions, displaying a maturity that constantly amazed Jonathan. "How much money total?" Isabella asked without looking up from her drawing. "We're estimating between $3 and $4 billion. Isabella's crayon stopped moving. "Billion with a B?" "That's right. Daddy never told me it was that much." "Your father probably didn't know the full scope," Chen continued. "He was working with one piece of the puzzle. But the information he gathered, combined with what you've provided, gives us the complete picture for the first time." Agent Lawson joined the video call from the FBI field office. "Isabella, We need to discuss the next phase of the investigation. We're ready to start making arrests, but we'll need your testimony to make the charges stick. When? Soon. We're coordinating with federal prosecutors and international authorities. Some of these accounts are overseas, which complicates seizure procedures. Tommy looked up from his coloring. What's testimony? Isabella explained patiently. It means telling a judge and jury what I know about the bad people who stole money. Will that be scary? Probably. But sometimes you have to do scary things to help people. Jonathan marveled at how naturally Isabella had taken on the role of Tommy's protector and teacher. Despite everything she'd been through, she was still thinking about others. There's something else, Agent Lawson continued. We've intercepted communications, suggesting that certain parties are still actively searching for you, Isabella. They haven't accepted the official story about your disappearance. What kind of communications? Jonathan asked. Phone calls between known associates of the laundering network, references to the girl, and unfinished business. They're being careful about what they say over monitored lines, but the implication is clear. Isabella's expression grew serious. They won't stop looking for me, will they? Probably not until we arrest them all. Then we need to arrest them faster. That afternoon, while Tommy napped and Isabella worked on homework provided by the FBI's education specialist, Jonathan received a call from Rick. John, where the hell are you? The Henderson project is falling apart. The clients are asking questions. The crew doesn't know what to do, and I'm running out of excuses. Jonathan felt the weight of his normal life pressing against the surreal circumstances he was living in. Henderson Construction represented 15 years of building a business, establishing relationships, creating something stable for Tommy's future. Can you handle things for another few weeks? Another few weeks? John, you've been AWOL for 4 days. I need answers. I can't explain right now, Rick. I just need you to trust me. Trust you with what? Jonathan, talk to me. Are you in some kind of trouble? Through the kitchen window, Jonathan could see Agent Martinez in the surveillance van, and beyond that, a neighborhood that looked peaceful, but was actually under constant federal protection. His life had become something out of a spy novel. I'm helping someone who needs it, Jonathan said finally. Someone who's in danger. Rick was quiet for a moment. This about that little girl at the airport. How did you... John, I've known you. Since high school. You wouldn't disappear for just any reason. Plus, I saw the news about some missing kid connected to a federal case. Jonathan's blood ran cold. What news? Channel 7 ran a story about an 8-year-old girl who disappeared from FBI custody. They're saying she was a witness in some major financial crimes investigation. What exactly did they say? Not much detail, just that the witness had been moved to a secure location and that federal authorities were confident in her safety. But John, if you're involved in something that dangerous, I have to go, Rick. Jonathan hung up and immediately called Agent Lawson. We have a problem. There's news coverage about Isabella's case. We know. That story was part of our disinformation campaign. We fed selective details to the media to reinforce the impression that Isabella is in official witness protection. But my business partner saw it and connected it to what happened at the airport. How much does he know? Just that I was helping a child at the airport, and now I'm involved in something federal. But Rick's not stupid. If he can piece it together, we'll handle it. Is your partner trustworthy? Jonathan thought about Rick. 15 years of friendship, shared struggles building their business. Countless times Rick had proven his loyalty and discretion. Completely. Then we'll bring him into the loop. Controlled information, sworn to secrecy. It's better than having him ask questions that might attract the wrong kind of attention. That evening, Rick arrived at the safe house under Agent Martinez's escort. His weathered face showed concern and confusion as he was led through the security. Protocols. Jesus, John, what have you gotten yourself into? Jonathan introduced Rick to Isabella, explaining the situation in general terms while omitting the most sensitive details. Rick listened with growing amazement and concern. So this little girl is basically the key witness in a billion-dollar theft case. Multi-billion, Isabella corrected matter-of-factly. And yes, Rick stared at her for a moment, then turned to Jonathan. And you volunteered to protect her? Someone had to. John, you realize these people killed her father. What makes you think they won't kill you? They'll try, Isabella said before Jonathan could answer, but we have really good FBI agents protecting us, and Jonathan is very brave. Kid, bravery doesn't stop bullets. No, but good planning does, and Agent Lawson is very good at planning. Rick shook his head in disbelief. John, I came here to talk you out of whatever crazy thing you were doing, but after meeting her, he gestured toward Isabella. I get it. I'd probably do the same thing. Does that mean you'll help cover for me with the business? Hell, I'll do more than that. You need anything, supplies, equipment, extra security, you call me. Isabella beamed at Rick with the same trust she'd shown Jonathan from the beginning. Thank you, Mr. Rick. Daddy always said you could tell who the good people were by how they treated children. Smart man, your father. Yes, he was. That night, after Tommy and Isabella had gone to bed, Jonathan sat on the back porch with Agent Martinez, both men keeping watch over their quiet suburban street. You ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Jonathan asked. Keeping a kid safe from people who want to kill her. Not really a moral dilemma in my book. But we're asking her to carry a burden no child should have to carry. She's 8 years old and we're expecting her to take down a criminal empire. Martinez was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think she'd carry that burden, whether we helped her or not. At least this way she's not carrying it alone. Through the window, Jonathan could see Isabella's bedroom, where she was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Tommy was in the bed next to hers, having insisted that Isabella shouldn't have to sleep in a strange room by herself. Agent Martinez, what happens when this is all over? When the trials are finished and the criminals are in prison? What do you mean? I mean, what happened to Isabella? Does she go back into the system, foster care? She doesn't have any other family. Martinez looked at Jonathan with a knowing expression. Getting attached, are we? She's been through more trauma than most adults could handle, but she's still worried about protecting other people. She's remarkable. She is that. I keep thinking about what her father told her, to find someone good to help her. What if he didn't just mean this? Our case, what if he meant for life? Jonathan, are you talking about adoption? The word hung in the air between them. Jonathan hadn't allowed himself to think it consciously, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he'd been imagining Isabella as a permanent part of their family. I don't know. Maybe. Is that crazy? Probably. But then again, volunteering to protect. A federal witness in your spare bedroom is also crazy, and that seems to be working out. A movement in the shadows across the street caught Martinez's attention. He spoke quietly into his radio, then relaxed as the response came back. Perimeter patrol. False alarm. But Jonathan had seen something that made his blood run cold. For just a moment, he'd glimpsed a figure watching their house from behind a parked car 3 blocks away. Too far for the FBI's motion sensors to detect, but close enough to observe their routines. Agent Martinez, I think we may have company. Where? 3 blocks south. Someone was watching the house. Martinez was already on his radio, coordinating a sweep of the area. Within minutes, unmarked vehicles were moving through the neighborhood, searching for signs of surveillance. They found nothing, but Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that their safe suburban refuge had just become significantly less safe. Inside the house, Isabella stirred in her sleep, murmuring her father's name. Even in dreams, she was still fighting the people who had destroyed her family. The battle was far from over. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Denver was surrounded by news vans and protesters holding signs demanding justice for stolen pensions. Inside courtroom 4B, Isabella sat at the witness table wearing a navy blue dress, similar to the one she'd worn the day Jonathan first found her at the airport. But everything else about her had changed. Gone was the terrified, abandoned child. In her place sat a confident young girl who had spent weeks preparing for this moment with federal prosecutors. Jonathan watched from the gallery, his heart swelling with pride and anxiety as Isabella faced the defense attorney's cross-examination. "Miss Reyes," the attorney said smoothly, "you were only 7 years old when these alleged events took place. How can the jury be certain your memories are accurate?" Isabella looked directly at the jury, just as the prosecutors had taught her. "Because my daddy made me practice every day. He said memory was like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. But children's memories can be influenced by adults, can't they? How do we know these FBI agents didn't coach you to say what they wanted to hear?" Jonathan tensed, but Isabella remained calm. "You can test me," she said simply. "Ask me about any account number, any password, any date. If the FBI made it up, the numbers wouldn't work when you check them." The defense attorney's confident expression faltered. For 3 days, Isabella had provided testimony so detailed and accurate that international banks had confirmed every account, every transaction, every stolen dollar she described. "Miss Reyes, your father was involved in illegal activities. How do we know you're not protecting his criminal associates?" Isabella's voice grew quiet but firm. "My daddy died trying to return money to families who needed it. The people who killed him are sitting right there." She pointed directly at the defendant's table. "They stole money from kids like my friend Tommy, from grandparents who worked their whole lives, from families who trusted them to keep their money safe." Margaret Chen sat in the press gallery, furiously taking notes. Her investigative series, On the Money Laundering Network, had won a Pulitzer Prize nomination, but more importantly, it had led to legislative reforms that would prevent similar thefts in the future. The lead prosecutor, District Attorney Rachel Stone, stood for redirect. Examination. "Isabella, why did you choose to testify instead of staying hidden in witness protection? Because hiding doesn't help the people who got hurt. My daddy always said that when you know something that can help people, you have a responsibility to speak up, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary. The bad people count on good people being too scared to fight back." After Isabella's testimony concluded, the trial moved swiftly. The evidence she'd provided was overwhelming. Bank records, communication intercepts, forensic accounting that traced every stolen dollar. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. 23. Defendants received sentences ranging from 15 years to life in prison. The recovered assets exceeded $3.8 billion, with restitution funds already being distributed to the victims. Outside the courthouse, Isabella stood between Jonathan and Tommy as reporters shouted questions. Agent Lawson had arranged for a brief press conference, but Isabella had insisted on keeping it simple. "I just want to say that my daddy would be proud that the money is going back to the families who earned it," she told the cameras. "And I want to thank the FBI agents and prosecutors who worked so hard to make sure the bad people couldn't hurt anyone else." "Isabella, what are your plans now?" one reporter called out. Isabella looked up at Jonathan with a smile that could have powered the entire courthouse. "I'm going home with my family." The adoption papers had been finalized the week before, a process expedited by federal authorities in recognition of the extraordinary circumstances. Isabella Maria Reyes had officially become Isabella Maria Mitchell, gaining not just a new name, but a new life filled with stability and love. Tommy grabbed Isabella's hand as they walked toward Jonathan's truck, now equipped with the latest security, features courtesy of the federal government. Izzy, do you think the bad people will ever try to hurt us again? Isabella considered the question with the seriousness she brought to everything. Maybe, but if they do, we have each other, and we have really good friends who will help us. Agent Martinez emerged from the courthouse, having testified about the airport incident that started everything. He'd been promoted to Deputy Director of the Financial Crimes Task Force, a position created specifically to prevent future cases like Eduardo Reyes's. How does it feel to be done with all this? Martinez asked Isabella. It doesn't feel done, she replied thoughtfully. It feels like the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of making sure it never happens again. 6 months later, Isabella stood at a podium in the congressional hearing room, addressing the House Financial Services Committee. At 9 years old, she was the youngest person ever to testify before Congress, but her presence commanded attention from representatives who had seen every kind of witness imaginable. Honorable representatives, Isabella began, reading from notes she'd written herself. My name is Isabella Mitchell, and I'm here to talk about why we need stronger laws to protect families' money. Committee Chairman Robert Hayes leaned forward with interest. Miss Mitchell, in your own words, can you explain why these protections are necessary? Because stealing isn't just about taking things. When people steal pension money, they're stealing grandparents' medicine. When they steal insurance money, they're stealing kids' college educations. When they steal government assistance money, they're stealing food from hungry families. The hearing room was completely silent as Isabella continued. My daddy died because he tried to stop people from stealing, but laws can stop them too if they're strong enough and if good people are brave enough to use them. The Financial Protection Act, drafted based on Isabella's testimony and the evidence from the money laundering case, passed both houses of Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support. President Morgan signed it into law 6 weeks later, with Isabella and Jonathan in attendance at the White House ceremony. 2 years after that day at the airport, Jonathan watched Isabella help Tommy with his math homework at their kitchen table in Thornton. The house was the same, but everything else had changed. Security systems had been upgraded, but more importantly, their family had grown from 2 people trying to navigate divorce and custody arrangements to 3 people who chose to be together. Dad, Isabella said without looking up from the multiplication. Your problems, Ms. Chen called. She wants to know if I'll do an interview for the anniversary story. What do you think? I think people should remember what happened, but I also think they should know that good things can come from bad things if people are willing to help each other. Sarah arrived for her weekly dinner with the family, a tradition that had evolved naturally as they all adjusted to their new dynamic. She'd initially struggled with the changes, but watching Isabella thrive had gradually won her over. How was school today? Sarah asked, settling into what had become her regular chair. We learned about heroes in history class, Tommy announced. I told everyone my sister is a hero, Isabella blushed. I'm not a hero, Tommy. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly what heroes do, Jonathan said, ruffling her hair. They do what needs to be done, even when it's hard. That evening, after homework was finished and Tommy was in bed, Isabella and Jonathan sat on the back porch, looking at the stars. It had become their tradition. A quiet time to talk about the day, about the future, about anything that was on Isabella's remarkable mind. Jonathan, Isabella said quietly, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't helped me that day? Every day. But then I remember that you're here. And Tommy has a sister who teaches him about courage, and families all over the country got their money back. So I think everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Do you think my daddy would be proud of how everything turned out? Jonathan looked at this incredible child who had survived trauma that would have broken most adults, who had chosen to fight for justice instead of hiding in safety, who had brought healing and hope into his own broken family. Isabella, I think your father would be amazed, not just at what you accomplished, but at who you've become. Isabella leaned against Jonathan's shoulder, finally allowing herself to be the 9-year-old child she'd never really had the chance to be. I miss him. I know you do. But you carry the best parts of him with you every day. The good parts, the courage, the determination to help people, the belief that one person can make a difference. You helped me make a difference. We helped each other. Inside the house, Tommy called out that he needed another glass of water, and Isabella jumped up to help him. It was such a normal, everyday moment that Jonathan had to remind himself how extraordinary their journey had been. From an abandoned child at an airport to a federal witness who brought down a criminal empire to a beloved daughter and sister who made their family complete. Isabella's story was one of resilience, justice, and the power of choosing to help when help was needed. 3 years later, Isabella started middle school with the confidence of someone who had faced down corporate, criminals, and congressional committees. Tommy, now 9, proudly introduced her to his friends as "my sister who helped the FBI catch bad guys." The money laundering network that had stolen billions from American families was completely dismantled. The Financial Protection Act had prevented dozens of similar schemes. Margaret Chen's investigative series had inspired a new generation of journalists to pursue financial crimes reporting. And in a small house in Thornton, Colorado, a construction worker named Jonathan Mitchell tucked his 2 children into bed. Each night, grateful for the day a terrified little girl had changed his life forever. Sometimes the most important moments begin with a simple decision to help. Sometimes a single act of kindness can save more than one life. And sometimes, when good people choose to stand up to bad people, justice prevails. Isabella Maria Mitchell grew up to become a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes. Tommy Mitchell became a social worker, helping children in crisis. And Jonathan Mitchell learned that being a hero doesn't require special powers. It just requires the willingness to do what's right, even when it's difficult. The story that began with a crying child at Gate B-17 became a legacy of courage, family, and the unshakable belief that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they choose to help each other. And every year, on the anniversary of that day at the airport, the Mitchell family returns to Denver International to remember where their journey began and to honor the memory of Eduardo Reyes, a father who died protecting his daughter and whose sacrifice ultimately protected thousands of other families. Some endings are really just beginnings in disguise. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.